This once again is Paul Glumaz with the political movement of Lyndon LaRouche, and today is the 4th of June, and we are watching a global transformation that's going on. I should correct that. We are causing a global transformation to occur, and the reality is that what is being initiated in the Belt and Road and the new paradigm, which was put forward by Lyndon and Helga LaRouche back in the early 90s and picked up by Xi Jinping of China in 2013. This is now having an incredible global impact 5 years later. Now, what is happening is that the economic exports, the economic growth of African countries are now taking off. Some of these countries are growing, economies are growing at phenomenal rates, 10, 15, 20% a year. They're starting off pretty much without much, but they are growing fast. And what China is doing, and now other nations are going to come in on the back behind China, is that they intend to turn Africa, with its 1.2 billion people, into the new workshop and agricultural producer for the world. And this is going to transform the African people. Can you imagine the increase in everybody's living standard in the world if 1.2 billion Africans become massively involved in productive manufacturers and expansion of food exports? Let me tell you something. This is huge. This is what is now getting underway. Okay, this is the Africa which up until now, there have been millions of people fleeing all of the guerrilla wars, the terrorism, and that was being promoted by the United States and the Obama administration and the Bush administration and the British. Now that's all being changed. Africa is going to be developed. And with the development of Africa, the net increase in productive activity, the net increase in wealth of the human race will exponentially increase, much to the hatred of the neoliberal establishment, much to the hatred of the European oligarchy, much to the hatred of these people that would like to see these people eliminated rather than developed. Now, I take you back to 44 years to a secret memorandum, study memorandum called NSM 200, which Kissinger was under Kissinger's name, and it was declassified in the late 80s. And what NSM 200 laid out is, and this is at a certain point in the Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviets, between the transatlantic and the East. It laid out that the Soviet Union and the Cold War were not the greatest threat to the West, but it was the development of increased population in third world countries, and increased development that goes with the increased population, or an increased development that creates increased population, and that increased population and increased development would tap the resources, the so-called scarce resources that they wanted to keep undeveloped, for use and control by the transatlantic, trilateral, Japan, North America, Western Europe at the time, crowd. And so a policy began to emerge in the United States to undermine, instead of develop these countries and increase U.S. productive activity to develop these countries, the policy of undermining these countries began to take shape. Now, at the same time this was going on, unbeknownst to the LaRouche movement, Lyndon LaRouche later on was promoting the concept that there are no limits to growth. Because when human beings are developed to the point where they make discoveries, scientific discoveries, and they have a society that's culturally developed to the point where those discoveries are then realized, then there is a dramatic change in the resource available. And that is through something called energy flux density. Because if you go from wood burning to charcoal burning, there's an increase in the energy flux density at the source of the use, and then different things can be created, different resources become available. And then when you go from charcoal to coal, you open up an entire area of potential development and use of, and you have a much higher energy density of coal. And then when you go into petroleum, gas, oil related power, you further increase the ability to make available resources. And then when you go to fusion, or nuclear fission or fusion, you completely transform your resource ability. So now, in the context of this African development, the Chinese government is about to announce that there will be no more limitations on the number of children that Chinese families can have. So they went from a one-child policy in 1978, and 1979, and then in the last 5 years, they've had a two-child policy. Now they're removing the restrictions on having children. And the reason that is being given is that the reason that they had a one-child policy in the beginning was they felt that the rising population of China would outstrip the ability of the Chinese to produce and develop the resources to be able to sustain that increased population. So they imposed the one-child policy. But now the Chinese are saying there is no restriction to the number of people. There's only a restriction in terms of the quality of science and the quality of development of your society. So now China is now beginning to become the #1 country for scientific research in the world. It is now surpassing the United States and Europe as a whole in terms of the scientific research. And this is only the beginning. So this is the path that China is on, and this is the path that the world is on at this point, as can be seen by the African developments. Now, is the United States now going to regroup and go to nuclear war to stop this? Is the United States going to deploy its forces, its military forces, and the mercenary armies that are associated with international terrorism and the drug trade? Are these forces going to be deployed to destroy the ability for this system of infrastructure development, which lays the groundwork for then the development of agriculture and manufacturing, to be allowed to take place? Is Europe going to become a full partner in this developmental process? Is Germany going to become a full partner in this developmental process? Is the United States going to become a full partner in this developmental process? That's now much more a reality as this process develops. And this is a new world. And perhaps one of the most spectacular developments of the last week is that the tension between China and India, which is also was considered to be a very important factor in stopping or blocking the Belt and Road Initiative, is to line up China against India, or line up India against China. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, was at a conference of the International Institute of Strategic Studies, which is a British operation. They had an Asian branch, and they had their meeting in Shangri-La. And I think Pompeo was there. I don't know who else was there. I'm not sure, but or General Mattis was there. And what Narendra Modi said is that the time for confrontation in geopolitics is over. It's time for cooperation. That the future of the world is in Asia, the future of developments in Asia, and it's time to end power conflicts and work as a on a cooperative basis. This is his speech that he gave. This is the first time this has been said in this way, and this is following earlier last month in the discussion that went on between him, the 2 days of discussions that went on with him and the president of China. So this is a huge development. Another major development in all of this is that Japan is currently hosting a conference on investment in rail infrastructure in Russia for the development of the further development of the Trans-Siberian Railway and the further development of the eastern part of Russia. Now, this is important because the Chinese have, as well as the Japanese have unparalleled technology. But this also means that the Japanese are going to be partnering with the Chinese, and also the deals are being worked out for the Indians to partner with the Chinese in the development of Africa. So when Shintaro Abe was in Russia the week before at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, he gave a presentation on how Japanese methods of industrial organization could be used to dramatically upgrade the industrial manufacturing capabilities of Russia. This is the kind of thing that is going on, that Americans are not being allowed to even know. The policy people know about it, and most of them are raging in hatred of it. Most of them are saying that this is Chinese imperialism, they're trying to take over the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or this is Russia and imperialism trying to take over the world also. So this is not getting through to the American people, that this is the reality. Now we come to this reality as is reflected in the North Korean developments, in the developments around North Korea. There's no possible way that the deal that Trump is working out with North Korea can be done without the approval or involvement of the countries of the region. And since you don't have China versus Japan anymore, and you don't have Japan versus Russia anymore, and you don't have South Korea versus China and Russia, or South Korea versus Japan anymore, these countries are looking forward to the full integration of North Korea into a development zone, which will be one of the greatest development zones in the world. It includes the northeastern part of China, the most eastern part of Russia, the two Koreas, and Japan. This is the beginning of the full development of that region. And 3 rail lines are being proposed to connect all of this up through North Korea from South Korea. And all of this will turn the two Koreas into an economic superpower. If you add the productive potentials of the North Koreans, which are being unutilized. You put all of this together. This is huge. This is at the core of whatever agreement Trump works out. Up until now, these power block conflicts and the lack of an integrated economic vision has been at the center of there being the manipulation and permanent conflict that has existed since the end of the Korean War, and also since the end of World War II. So now all of that can be swept away. And Trump is saying things which are quite spectacular. He is saying that North Korea can become a very prosperous place. It can be very good, or it can be very bad. And then he's saying he didn't like the visit of LaRouche to meet with Kim Jong-un to deliver a message from Putin. But then again, he said that could be a very good thing. So he's saying it's a very good thing, it's a potentially very bad thing, it's a very bad thing, it's a potentially very good thing. He's zigzagging all over the place. But what you have is not a debate over human rights issues or environmental issues or blocks. Trump is not doing that. He's involved in this, and my sense is that he's trying to get the best deal out of it for the United States from a political and economic arrangement. Because once this is done, then the whole reason for U.S. troops ultimately in Japan and Okinawa and South Korea is you don't need them anymore. And you don't need to have the THAAD missile deployment preparing for a first strike against China. You don't need that anymore. Now, this is not something that's going to go down easy with the military-industrial complex, and it's not going to go down easy with the policymakers, but that's the direction that this is going to go. So Trump has to deal with massive internal resistance to all of this, and that's not an easy thing. Now, something similar is starting to occur in the Middle East. There is backroom discussions going on between Iran and Israel, and Syria, and Turkey, and the U.S., and Russia, for all kinds of different agreements on the disposition of Iran within Turkey, on a number of different things. And this is all starting, is all part of the fact that it's now been said that there are active plans for Trump to meet with Vladimir Putin. The ambassador to Russia, Huntsman, has now, U.S. ambassador to Russia, has now said there is going to be a summit coming up. And why is the summit necessary? Because that's the only way you can deal with the Korean issue, the Middle East issues, the Eastern European issues, Ukrainian issues. You cannot, unless you bring Trump in to a discussion with Putin to work it out, you can't work it out. And of course, that is what the establishment here, that's what the British, that's what this whole crowd has been trying to do, and the whole Russiagate is to prevent that from happening. Because once you have Donald Trump and China and Russia and then India talking about what is in their interests, not what's in the interest of the international bankers, not what's in the interest of the international drug trade, not what's in the interest of these neoliberal, psychotic, unipolar assholes, then you have a way to deal with a lot of the problems that have been created over this period of time. And you also have the economic component, which is that as this financial system collapses, as the dollar increasingly is no longer the basis of international payment settlements, but other systems are set up, systems of currency swapping, other arrangements are set up, then the U.S. also has to change its industrial policy. The U.S. has to have an industrial economic development policy. That's where Trump has to go. Now, what is Trump's agenda? Well, his primary agenda is to deliver his promises to the people that have faith in him and have voted for him and are still supporting him despite all the attacks that have occurred on him. But let us look at that a little bit to get a sense of this. Our political system, for a long, long time, acceleratingly since the assassination of Kennedy, has been based upon a massive intermediation of think tanks, experts, consultants, pollsters, in terms of grooming and shaping political candidates to aspire from office. And the purpose of all these think tanks and everything else is to interpret reality. And the candidates and the elected officials for the longest time have been operating on the basis of the lesser of two evils. So the idea of winning an election is you find out the most inoffensive way to proceed. That is, you don't want to offend one group, but if you offend one group, then, and if you support one group, then you might offend another group. So you basically end up with politicians who basically say nothing and are very good at saying nothing. And the better they are at saying nothing, the more they're respected and the more skilled they're seen by the power backers and by the people that support them and use them. So you essentially have this very polished, very Obama was a very good example of this. Others are a very good example of this. Bush was not, but you have a very polished disconnect between the voter and the politician. And after a while, everything seems to be getting worse, and then people just sort of give up and they say, well, there's nothing you can do. And so more and more people drop out of the picture. Some people still keep voting because of the lesser of the two evils, because they're looking at the candidates from the standpoint of who's going to do the less damage, assuming that they're both going to do damage, or more than, they're going to do damage. But all these candidates have gone up through a process where they become marketable and they develop a package, and it's totally intermediated by the media, by the consultants, and so forth and so on. And then you have finally one candidate who has no intermediation whatsoever. He's not part of any think tank or any group. He has established, however, through his Apprentice reality TV show, a certain non-mediated relationship with a set of viewers who know him from this TV Apprentice and were involved in his decisions that he made with respect to who was going to become the apprentice. So these people were the initial base, and then Trump developed an unmediated relationship with the people, and his Twitter account is over 50 million. And so you no longer have this disconnect. Either you're connected to Trump and you like him, or you want him dead. But you don't have a disinterested situation anymore. You have a person who is causing waves, who's causing, disturbing the whole process. And this whole process of disturbing things can change. He can change from one day to the next, because it's not set in stone what he's going to do. Because what he's going to do is not determined yet. And what he's going to do is based upon how he's going to maintain the support that he has. And that support is not mediated by commentary, by the media, by whatever else. And it's the same way with international politics. People say Trump has known international policy. Trump does not listen to the experts. And that's all true. But Trump's policy is not being done on the basis of what the experts say, or what the groups say, or what the vetted PhD people say. It's based upon a direct personal relationship with these leaders. So he has a person. So his whole policy is we're going to work it out. How are we going to work it out? We're going to work it out with the leader of the other country. And we don't know what we're going to work out till I sit down and work it out with the leader. And he's not going to know what is going to come out of the discussion with Putin, but it's going to be worked out, whatever it has to be worked out, whatever is in the interest of him maintaining the support of the people, the forgotten people, basically, who voted for him or who still support him, which is why he's not out of office. Which is why this thing is still going on. It's all still going on because he hasn't lost that support yet. Other presidents would have lost that support by now, because people would have said, well, he's just another one. Just another one of those, people that they don't mean anything. They're just occupying the position. So this is what's going on. And the next time I bring this up, I'm going to go into more detail on this.